So in this video we're going to review and we're going to present our lab 1, and we are from group 3, and my name is Irfanlai bin Riflai, and my teammate or my friends, his name called Izzul Shami bin Ismail. So what is the title for this lab is basically JSA and HIRARC. So what is the objective of this lab 1 is we're going to know how JSA works and what is JSA actually are, and second is we're going to learn how to identify type of hazard that potentially going to have in a work or a lab area. Continue by we need to learn how to make a risk assessment using HIRARC, and lastly we also wanted to know how to suggest risk control to the organizations, right? Continue by scrolling all the way down, going to the question 1 or part 1. So what is the question on this part 1 is that create a JSA for an electronic engineer based on figure 1. So in this figure 1 we can see an adult doing a soldering on a electronic part, right? So we wanted to create a JSA. So how the JSA actually create? So JSA actually create in the table form. So in this table form we include our organizations, locations, and what is the departments and supervisor and the people that who going to analyze this thing, and we have a title which is the job title, what is this job actually are, and the title of the person, like who is this person, maybe it's an engineer or a technician or anything. We have a JSA number as well as a date. So on the bottom here we split into 3 columns. We have a sequence of the basic job steps. It basically means that every single activity and every single sequence we need to know in that jobs. So potentially we can analyze the hazard on each of the activity, which is the second column. We can see a potential hazard. So in the third column we have the recommended action. So basically means that how we going to prevent something bad's going to happen, right? Okay, so basically the first activities or the sequence is basically is melting the solder, right? So melting the solder potentially going to produce fumes and smoke, and potentially the employee or the worker going to inhale it and potentially going to cause some sort of respiration problem, right? And how we're going to prevent this is basically by install an exhaust fan and wearing a protective mask, right? So the second one is cleaning the component, and we know that when we clean the component we're going to use some sort of chemical, and chemical is very dangerous and it could irritating the eyes. So what we're going to do is wearing a protective glass, right, to avoid our eyes to get irritated. And the third one is the placement of the PCB. So when we're holding the PCB, we know that every single PCB have a sharp edge and potentially it could cut our skin. So what we're going to do is wearing a glove, so potentially we're going to avoid getting cut by the PCB edges, right? So lastly we have application of solder. So we know that the soldering iron is hot, right? It's melting, so potentially it's going to be dump heat into our skin, right? So how we're going to prevent that is by wearing a long sleeve shirt, lab coats, and a long pants, and also wearing a shoes that is fully wrapped around our leg, right? So we will prevent the solder dump heat into our skin. So when we're going to apply this job safety analysis is on the jobs that is potentially not going to cause any sort of very dangerous hazard or very dangerous damage or very harmful to the humans or damage to the equipment or environment, like very too serious stuff. So it's just a normal jobs that have a very small risk of hazard that doesn't have a procedure, then that kind of jobs you can apply job safety analysis to make the working flow a lot smoother, right?
Okay, for part 2, the question asks about hazard identification, risk assessment and risk control, or also known as HIRARC. And the question asks to identify 10 potential hazard and to construct and complete the HIRARC table. Okay, as we know, HIRARC table consists of sequence of job step, the type, then the hazard identification that consists of hazard and effect, and then current risk control, and next is risk assessment that consists of probability and severity, and also have risk ranking. They also consist of score and level. And next is risk control. They ask the recommended action. So for the first situation, the situation show the throwing hammer, and it is a non-routine activities. Then the hazard identification. The hazard is the hammer could swing and hit someone, and the effect is light injury. So the current risk control is to do the standard operation procedure, and for the risk assessment, the probability is 2 and the severity is 2. And for the risk ranking, the score, the way to find the score is we multiply the probability and the severity. So 2 times by 2, we get 4. And the level according to 4 is L level. And the risk control, the recommendation that we can do is the risk can be accepted. The second situation is smoking, and this is a non-routine activities. And the hazard is the other worker can inhale the cigarette smoke, and it can affect the minor injury. So the current risk control is standard operation procedure, and the probability is 3 and the severity is 1. So the score is 3 times 1, we get 3, and the level is L. So the recommended action for risk control is specific control unnecessary. And then is number 3, situation number 3 is broken glass, and it is a non is and it is a routine activity. And the hazard is someone might slip into the broken glass, and the effect is like injury. So the current risk control is elimination, and the probability is 2, the severity is 2, and the score is 2 times 2 is 4, and the level is L. And the recommendation for risk control is specific control unnecessary. And next is situation number 4, that is ladder is propped up, and it is a non-routine activities. So the hazard is it's not secure, and he could fall off it, and the effect is light injury. And the current risk control is elimination. Then the probability is 2 and the severity is 2. So the score is 2 times 2 is 4. So the level is L. And the recommended action for risk control is need recording and monitoring the activities. So the next is standing on two box situation. So it is a no routine activities, and hazard is he could fall off of the box, and the effect is he can get the light injury. So the current risk control is standard operation procedure, and next is probability. Probability is 2 and the severity is 2. So the score is 2 times 2 is 4, and the level is L. And the recommended action for risk control is need recording and monitoring the activities. Okay, next for situation number 6, carrying a very long plank, and it is a non-routine activities. So the hazard is the long plank could swing and hit someone's head, and the effect is severe injury. So the current risk control is need to do the standard operation procedure, and the next is probability is 2 and the severity is 3. So the score is 2 times 3 is 6, and the level is M. And the recommendation for this control is we need to control the management such as standard operating procedure. And next is situation number 7, that 4 huge pipes are not properly secure, and it is a routine activity, and the hazard is it could fall onto the workman below them, and the effect is severe injury. So the current risk control is engineering control, and the next is probability. Probability is 2 and the severity is 3. So the score is 2 times 3 is 6, and the level is M. And the recommendation for risk control for this situation is control management such as job safety analysis JSA. And the next is situation number 8. There are nails on in the planks of the wood on the floor, and it is routine activity. So the hazard is someone could accidentally step on the nails and get injured. So the effect is like injury. So the current risk control that we can do is elimination, and, and the next is probability, that is 4 and the severity is 2. So the score is 4 times 2 equal to 8, and the level is M. And the recommendation for the risk control is communicate and reminder is required. And then is situation number 9, that is lifting a box from an uneven stack, and it is a non-routine activities. So the hazard is some of the boxes on the stack could fall on him, and the effect is severe injury. So the current risk control is standard operation procedure, and then is the probability is 3 and the severity is 3. So the score is 3 times 3 is equal to 9, and the level is M. And the recommendation for risk control is control management such as job safety analysis, JSA. And the next is number 10, that is tools are hanging out of the box, and it is a routine activities. And the hazard is the tools could fall onto someone's head, and the effect is severe injury. And the current risk control that we can do is standard operation procedure, and then is the probability is 2 and the severity is 3. So the score is 2 times 3 is equal to 6. So the level is M. So the recommendation for this station is to control management such as standard operating procedure SOP.
So moving on the question and discussion, the first question is what is hazard, and the answer is hazard is some sort of situation that potentially going to cause a danger or like damage or harm into humans or maybe a property and environment, right? So for the question 2, what are the control mechanism for hazard? So in control mechanism, we have 5 control mechanism hazard. So what are those? So there are eliminations, substitutions, isolation, engineer control, administration control, and personal protective equipment, right?
For question and discussion number 3, the question asks how do you differentiate between routine and non-routine hazard situation? So the answer is a non-routine hazard is an event or activity that occurs infrequently. For example, an accident that accidentally occurs by surprise, while a routine hazard makes an obvious hazard that sometimes requires extensive and detailed planning to eliminate the hazard. For example, the corrosive properties of chemicals sitting in a place that they should not be, and that make this an obvious hazard. The question and discussion for number 4 is what are the differences between JSA and HIRARC? JSA is a formal process to identify the dangers of specific job tasks, while HIRARC is a formal process to identify potential hazards related to an activity or operation. Analyze the level of risk associated with those hazards and propose controls. And the next is job safety analysis can help you reduce the task specific risk to workers, while risk assessment can help lower your overall corporate risk profile. Okay, for the conclusion, at the end of the conclusion from this lab class, we are able to recognize the importance of JSA, job safety analysis, where it can identify the dangers of specific tasks within the jobs in order to reduce the risk of injury to workers. Furthermore, we are able to pinpoint the types of hazard in the work or lab area. It is important to be able to pinpoint hazard because once the hazards have been identified, they can be handled properly. In addition, we also are able to produce risk assessment using HIRAC and suggesting the risk control to the organization. With this, we are able to use this risk control to perform and reduce the hazard exposure on each work activity.